And so we settle in. You can feel your body beginning to grow heavy in the most pleasant way. In our time together tonight, there is nothing to examine, nothing to understand, only the gentle rhythm of a story about a choice made in the cold shadows of a medieval city, a choice that history rarely bothers to record. Before we drift too far, if you feel a connection to this place, you're welcome to leave a quiet like or subscribe. Think of it not as a task, but as leaving a soft footprint in the sand before you continue your journey inward. And if you feel so inclined, you can leave a comment with your city and what time it is for you right now. It's a quiet way of knowing we are all here together, in this peaceful space at the same moment. Your rest, however, is what truly matters most. All right. Let the shadows in your room grow long and soft. Maybe you can hear the faint sound of your own breathing. And together, let's allow the story to begin. The first thing you are aware of is the cold. It's a damp, persistent cold that seems to seep through the thin wool of your cloak, through your skin, and settle deep inside your bones. You are huddled in the mouth of an alleyway, trying to make yourself as small as possible. The cobblestones beneath you are slick with something you'd rather not identify, and the air is a thick soup of smells: damp earth, wood smoke, roasting meat from a tavern you can't afford, and the ever-present sour tang of the river. This is your world. Your stomach is a tight, aching knot. It's been 2 days since your last real meal, a stale crust of bread given in pity. Hunger is a constant companion, a dull drumbeat behind your thoughts. You watch the people passing by in the main thoroughfare. A merchant, his belly straining the fine fabric of his doublet, strides past with an air of immense importance. His wife follows, her face a pale mask of piety, her gown a deep blue dyed with expensive woad, a color you're not even legally allowed to wear. Historians will call these some petty laws, rules designed to keep people like you looking like people like you. For you, it's just another wall in a city made of them. You have 3 options, or so the world tells you. The first is marriage. A fine idea, except you have no family to speak of and no dowry to offer. You are worth less on the marriage market than a lame horse. The second is the church. You could devote your life to God in a convent. Another fine idea, but joining a sisterhood also requires an entrance fee, a divine dowry of sorts. It seems even God has an accountant. The third option is servitude, but the last house you worked for cast you out when the master's wife accused you of stealing a silver spoon that later turned up in her own sewing box. No one will hire you now, so a fourth option has begun to present itself. It isn't spoken of in polite company. It isn't written on any job board. It is an offer made in a glance, a whisper, a shadow that detaches itself from a doorway and beckons you closer. Her name is Agnes, and she is old, but her eyes are sharp. She runs a house. Not a house of servants, but a house of servants, but a house of servants, but a house of company. She saw you yesterday, shivering in this same spot. And she didn't offer you bread. She offered you a look, a praising look that measured your hunger, your youth, and your desperation. It was an offer of a roof, of a warm meal, of survival. The price was unstated, but you both understood it perfectly. This is the choice that official records will never capture. The chronicles are full of kings and popes and glorious battles, but they are silent about the quiet, desperate calculations made by a girl in a cold alley. Historians still debate just how many women found themselves in your exact position, their stories lost between the lines of parish records and court documents. But they were there. Their numbers a quiet testament to a system with no safety nets. You feel the gnawing hunger again, sharp and insistent. It makes the decision for you. The cold seems a little less biting now, replaced by a strange, hollow resolve. You pull your threadbare cloak tighter around your shoulders, a useless gesture of defiance against the world. Slowly, unsteadily, you rise to your feet. Your joints ache in protest. You take one last look at the respectable world hurrying by on the main street, a world that has no place for you. Then, you turn and walk deeper into the alley, towards the part of town where the shadows are longer, and the doors are painted a discreet, unassuming grey. You are heading for Agnes' house. You are choosing the fourth option. You find the house easily enough. It's not marked, of course, but it has a certain air about it. The windows are shuttered, even though the sun is still a pale smudge in the afternoon sky. The door is heavy oak, but unlike the others on this narrow street, Agnes herself answers your tentative knock, opening the door just a crack. Her eyes, small and dark like currants, flick up and down, taking you in. She doesn't seem surprised to see you. She ushers you inside, and the first thing that hits you is the warmth. A fire crackles in a large hearth, casting a flickering golden light over the main room. The air smells of beeswax and something else, a faint, sweet perfume you can't place. It's a world away from the sour stench of the alley. For a moment, you just stand there, letting the heat sink into your chilled body. Agnes doesn't offer you a seat. She circles you like a farmer inspecting their stock. "You're thin," she says, her voice a dry rasp. It's a statement of fact, not sympathy. "But your teeth are good." "That's a start." "You didn't even know your teeth were part of the interview. And your hair, what color is that under all the grime?" "Brown." You nod mutely. "We can work with that." "Well, wash it with lye soap and then a rinse lime. It will bring out the lighter strand. This is your first lesson. You are no longer a person. You are a project. A collection of assets to be managed and improved." She leads you to the kitchen, a small bustling room where a plump woman is stirring a large pot that smells impossibly, wonderfully of stew. Agnes ladles a bowl if you and hands it to you with a chunk of dark bread. You eat standing up, hunched over the bowl, trying not to devour it so quickly that you seem like a wild animal. It's the most delicious thing you have ever tasted. While you eat, Agnes lays down the law. These are the unwritten, unforgiving rules of her house, a code of conduct that no one will ever write down, but which is enforced with absolute authority. Rule 1: the house gets a cut. A big one. She lists the expenses you're now indebted for: your food, your lodging, the new dress she will provide, the firewood, the candles. You're already in debt, and you haven't even begun. Rule 2: no stealing, not from the house, and especially not from the clients. They can be careless with their coin purses, Agnes says, her eyes narrowing. Especially after a few mugs of ale. But if a man complains his purse is light, it will be your hide that pays for it, not his forgetfonsels. Understood. You nod, your mouth full of stew. Rule 3: discretion. What happens in this house stays in this house. The men who come here are merchants, guild masters, even a knight or two. They have wives and reputations. You are a secret they pay to keep. You will not speak their names outside these walls. This rule, you sense, is as much about protecting the clients as it is about protecting the business. A business like this thrives in the shadows, and gossip is a light it cannot bear. Here's a little detail that formal history often smooths over: places like this, while officially condemned, were often unofficially tolerated. City officials knew they existed and, in some cases, even unofficially taxed them. It was a form of social pressure release, a necessary evil to protect the honorable women of the city from assault, or so they told themselves. Historians still argue about the degree to which civic authorities were complicit, with some records suggesting a surprising level of regulation, turning a blind eye into a very organized system. Agnes then gestures to two other women who have entered the room. They look you over with a mixture of pity and professional indifference. They've been where you are. One, a pale blonde named Isabel, gives you a small, tight smile. The other, a fiery redhead named Marie, just snorts and turns away. You will learn from them, Agnes commands. How to walk, how to talk, how to laugh at a man's jokes, even if they're not funny, especially if they're not funny. Especially if they're not funny, inside and out. Isabel will show you it's required. His ABS smile wavers for a fraction of a second, and a flicker of something you can tread passes through her eyes. You finish the stew, scraping the last drops from the wooden bowl with your bread. The warmth has spread from your stomach through your entire body. You are no longer cold, no longer starving. But as you stand in this warm, scented house, you realize you have just traded one kind of prison for another. The rules are different, the walls are warmer, but they are walls all the same. Your old life is over. Your old life is over. Your new one, with its unwritten rules and unspoken dangers, has just begun. The next morning, your education begins not with lessons on conversation or etiquette, but with a bucket of water and a small, lumpy mirror made of polished metal. Agnes stands behind you, her arms crossed, her expression critical. A man buys with his eyes first, she declares. And right now, you look like something the cat dragged in and then thought better of. A little bit of medieval motivational speaking for you. Your face in the polished bronze is a blurry, distorted version of yourself. You see a stranger with hollow cheeks, chapped lips, and dull, lifeless skin. Isabel is tasked with your transformation. She brings a small clay pot filled with a thick, white paste. This is CEI use, she explains, her voice slow. It will make your skin look like milk. She dips her fingers in and begins to apply it to your face. It feels cool and heavy, and it smells faintly of vinegar. You are being painted with Venetian CER use, a cosmetic that has been popular for centuries. It's a mixture of white leaden vinegar, fermented for weeks until it forms a smooth, opaque paste. It does a remarkable job of hiding blemishes, smoothing the complexion, and creating the fashionably pale look that signifies wealth and leisure. A woman with a pale face doesn't toil in the sun. It's the ultimate status symbol, painted right onto your skin. What you don't know, what Isabel might not fully understand herself, is that you are applying a potent neurotoxin to your face. The lead will slowly absorb through your skin. Over time, it will cause neurological damage, hair loss, muscle paralysis, and a delightful condition known as lead colic, which involves severe abdominal pain. It also corrodes the skin, meaning the more you use to cover the damage, the more damage it causes, creating a vicious cycle of dependency. Many wealthy women of the era suffered from its effects, their slow poisoning a testament to their dedication to fashion. For you, it's not about fashion, it's a professional necessity. Next comes the blush. Isabel produces another pot, this one containing a vibrant red powder. Just a touch on the apples of your cheeks, she instructs. This could be made from crushed cochineal beetles, a luxury import, or more likely, from something local and cheaper. Some women used vermilion, a pigment made from powdered cinnabar. Cinnabar is mercury sulfide, so to recap our little makeover session, you are now wearing a layer of lead, potentially topped with a dash of mercury. It's a recipe for a very pretty, very slow death. And then there are the eyes. To make them appear larger and more luminous, a few drops of belladonna are applied. Belladonna, or deadly nightshade, works by blocking the receptors in the muscles of your eye that constrict the pupils. This forces your pupils to dilate, creating a wide-eyed, captivating gaze. It also, as a fun side effect, makes your vision blurry and, in high doses, can cause hallucinations under rapid heartbeat. The name belladonna literally translates to beautiful woman in Italian, a testament to how highly this toxic effect was prized. As Isabel finishes, Agnes inspects her work. She tilts your head this way and that in the flickering light. Better, she concedes. You look less like a corpse and more like a doll. Men like dolls. You look at your reflection again. The blurry image staring back at you is unsettling. The skin is unnaturally white, the cheeks are perfect, rosy circle, the eyes dark and huge. It doesn't look like you. It's a mask. A beautiful, fragile, poisonous mask. You are learning another of the unwritten rules. Your face is no longer your own. It is part of the uniform, a carefully constructed illusion designed to please, to entice, and to sell. Historians debate how widespread the knowledge of these cosmetics' toxicity truly was. While some medical texts of the period warned against them, they were often dismissed as alarmist. For most people, the connection between the daily application of a face cream and the slow decay of one's health over years was simply too abstract to grasp. It was a secret hidden in plain sight, a danger accepted in the name of beauty and, in your case, survival. You touch your cheek gingerly. The lead paint feels like a second skin, a heavy shroud. You will wear this face every night. You will smile with it, and lie with it. And with every passing day, the poison will seep a little deeper, a silent price for the warmth of the fire and the food in your belly. The transformation of your soul has already begun. The transformation of your body is now underway, one toxic layer at a time. Once your face is deemed acceptable, your tour of the premises continues. Agnes leads you through a heavy curtain at the back of the main room, and you step into a world of steam and noise. This is the bathish, not a public one, where whole families might wash and socialize, but a private extension of Agnes' establishment, reserved exclusively for her clients and her girls. The air is thick with steam, smelling of damp wood and wet bodies. It clings to your clothes and makes your newly painted face feel slick. The room is cavernous with high timbered ceilings from which the steam rises in lazy curls. In the center is a large, sunken wooden tub, easily big enough for half a dozen people. Several men are already in it, their pale bodies bobbing in the murky water, their voices loud and boisterous as they drink ale from pewter mugs. This, Agnes explains, is often the first stop for a client. It's a place to relax, to socialize, to conduct a bit of business, and to size up the merchandise. You see Marie, the redhead, laughing at something one of the men says, her wet hair plastered to her shoulders. She expertly refills his mug from a nearby pitcher, her movements fluid and practiced. The connection between bathhouses and prostitution was so strong in the Middle Ages that the German word for a public bath, Badehouse, was often used as a synonym for a brothel. These places existed in a strange legal grey area. They were, on the one hand, providing a public service of hygiene. On the other, everyone knew what else was on offer. In some cities, like Southwark in London, the bathhouses were officially licensed and regulated by the Church of all institutions. The Bishop of Winchester was the landlord for a whole district of these establishments, collecting rent and earning him the nickname the Bishop of the Brothels. It's one of those historical ironies that feels too bizarre to be true. You will work here too, Agnes says, gesturing to the scene. Serving drinks, scrubbing backs, it's part of the service. She says the phrase scrubbing backs with a certain emphasis that makes it clear it's a euphemism for a whole menu of other activities. You watch as a client, a fleshy man with a thick neck, beckons to Isabel. She slips into the tub with him, her shift clinging to her body. He puts his arm around her, his hand disappearing into the cloudy water. She smiles, a practiced, empty smile that doesn't reach her eyes. The same eyes that held that flicker of something when she was told to teach you about cleanliness. This is where the business truly begins. The bathish serves as a public showroom and a private negotiation space all at once. It's a performance. The laughter, the attentiveness, the playful splashes, it's all a carefully choreographed dance designed to make the men feel powerful and desired. The women are not just selling their bodies. They are selling an experience, a fantasy of easy affection and uncomplicated pleasure. You feel a knot of anxiety tighten in your stomach. The boisterous, half-naked men, the murky water, the sheer public nature of it all, it's overwhelming. You spent your life trying to be invisible, to avoid drawing the wrong kind of attention. Now, your survival depends on being looked at, on being chosen. A strange and frankly unappealing tidbit of bathish culture was the communal sharing of bathwater. Water was a valuable commodity that had to be hauled and heated, so a single tub of hot water might be used by dozens of people before being changed. While the upper classes might have their own private baths, in a commercial establishment like this, hygiene was secondary to profit. Whatever germs and ailments one client brought in were happily shared with everyone else. And you're about to be one of the servers. Agnes gives you a little shove forward. Go on, she prods. Take a pitcher of ale. See the man in the corner, the one with the beard. His mug is empty. You pick up a heavy ceramic pitcher, your hands trembling slightly. The man with the beard looks up as you approach. He has small, piggy eyes that linger on your face, then travel down your body. He grins, showing a row of brown, gapped teeth. Well now, he slurs his voice thick with ale. Look what we have here. You force your lips into a smile, remembering Agnes' instruction. You try to make it look genuine, but it feels brittle, like a piece of glass about to shatter. You are on stage now, the steam swirls around you, and for a moment, you feel like you might suffocate. This is your new workplace. A world of manufactured cheerfulness, veiled transactions, and very, very questionable water quality. You survive your first shift in the bathish, mostly by keeping your head down and your pitcher full. In the days that follow, you learn that Agnes House is more than just a collection of individuals living under one roof. It is its own strange, self-contained society with hierarchies, alliances, and a surprising level of organization. In a way, it's a guild, not a formal one, like the Weavers or the Chandlers with official charters and coats of arms. This is a guild of shadows, its rules whispered, its membership a secret. At the top, of course, is Agnes. She is the guild master, the madame, the abbess of this strange convent. She controls everything: the money, the food, the rules. Her word is absolute. A dispute between two women is brought to her for judgment. A client's complaint is handled by her. She is the law. Beneath her are the established women, like Isabel and Marie. They are the journeymen of this trade. They have been here for years, and they know the rhythms of the house. They have their own regular clients, men who ask for them specifically. This is a mark of status. It means they are valued, that they have proven their worth and built a sliver of stability in an unstable world. Then there are the newcomers, the apprentices, like you. You are at the bottom of the ladder, given the least desirable tasks and the most difficult clients. You are expected to learn by watching, to absorb the culture of the house through osmosis. This informal structure was common across Europe. In some cities, brothels were organized into surprisingly complex systems. For example, in 14th century Venice, there was a specific, designated area for prostitution called the Car and Pain. The women there had to abide by a host of regulations, including rules about where they could live and what they could wear. It was a way for the state to contain, control, and profit from the trade. Historians are still piecing together how these official systems interacted with the informal, madam-run households like the one you're in. It was a complex dance of official condemnation and practical tolerance. The sisterhood, if you can call it that, is a complicated thing. On the one hand, there is a palpable sense of competition. A popular woman gets more clients, which means more favor from Agnes and a slightly larger share of the earnings. A new face, like yours, is a potential threat. Marie, the redhead, makes her disdain for you clear. She accidentally trips you when you're carrying a tray of drinks. She makes loud, cutting remarks about your clumsiness just within earshot of a potential client. But on the other hand, there is a grudging, almost invisible thread of solidarity. It's Isabel who pulls you aside and shows you how to properly mend a tear in the cheap fabric of your new dress, so Agnes won't charge you for a replacement. It's Isabel who quietly warns you which clients are pinchers and which are weepers who will bore you with their marital woes. This is crucial, life-saving information, passed down from one generation of women to the next. One evening, after the last client has stumbled out into the night, you are all gathered in the main room. The air is thick with the smell of stale ale and snuffed candles. You are exhausted, your face aching from hours of forced smiling, your body sore from everything else. Agnes is counting the night's earnings, her lips moving silently as she sorts the coins into little piles. You watch Marie expertly remove her lead-based CE. I use makeup using a cloth soaked in wine or vinegar, a process that was almost as important as putting it on. A fashionably gross piece of historical trivia is that some women used a more organic remover. It was believed that fresh urine, particularly that of a child, was an effective solvent for the stubborn lead paint and was even thought to be good for the complexion. Thankfully, Agnes seems to be able to afford wine. Isabel sits by the fire, her gaze distant and weary. You notice she has a small wooden carving of a saint clutched in her hand, her thumb rubbing over its smooth, worn surface. It's Saint Mary Magdalene, the patron saint of women like you. A reformed sinner. It's a quiet act of faith, a desperate plea for protection or perhaps forgiveness, in a place that seems entirely godless. You realize that beneath the cynical exterior, these women are just as scared as you are. They are all just trying to survive, bound together by their shared circumstance. This is your new family. A dysfunctional, competitive, and fiercely protective guild of outcasts. You are not friends, not really. You are colleagues in the world's oldest, most maligned profession. But in the quiet moments, in the shared glances of understanding and the whispered words of warning, you find a strange, fragile kind of belonging. It's not love, and it's not kind of belonging. It's not love, and it's not kindness. It's a shared pact of survival, and right now, it's the only thing you have. The night you've been dreading finally arrives. Agnes approaches you after the evening meal, her expression unreadable. There's a man, she says simply. A wool merchant from Ghent. HES new to the city. He doesn't want one of the usual S. He wants fresh. The way she says the word makes your skin crawl. You are the fresh meat. She sends you upstairs to a small chamber at the back of the house. The room is tiny, containing only a narrow bed with a straw-stuffed mattress, a wooden stool, and a single tallow candle that sputters in a dish, casting long, dancing shadows on the wattle and daub walls. The air is cold. This room doesn't get the benefit of the main hearth. You sit on the edge of the bed, your hands clasped so tightly in your lap that your knuckles are white. Your heart is a frantic drum against your ribs. You've imagined this moment 100 times since you walked through Agnes' door, and each time it was a scene of terror and violence. You picture a brutish, hulking figure, reeking of ale, who will tear your new dress and treat you like a sack of grey. The minutes stretch into an eternity. The only sounds are the frantic thumping of your own heart and the distant, muffled laughter from the main room downstairs. You are utterly alone, waiting. Finally, you hear heavy footsteps on the wooden stairs. They stop outside your door. The latch clicks. The door creaks open. The man who enters is not what you expected. HES not a monster. HES neither old nor young, with a round, fleshy face and a fringe of thinning brown hair. He is, as Agnes said, a wool merchant. You can smell the faint lanolin scent of his trade clinging to his clothes. He looks less like a predator and more like a nervous sheep. He stands in the doorway for a moment, blinking in the candlelight, looking almost as scared as you feel. He clutches a small leather pouch in his hand. This is the strange, unspoken reality that the fiery sermons and moralizing tales never mention. For many men, these encounters were not acts of conquest, but awkward, fumbling transactions born of loneliness or curiosity, or a simple human need for connection in a world that was often harsh and isolating. But it makes it mundane. He clears his throat. "Are you the girl?" he asks, his voice surprisingly soft. You nod, unable to speak. He shuffles into the room and closes the door behind him, plunging the room into even deeper gloom. He doesn't seem to know what to do next. He looks at you, then at the straw, then at his own feet. The silence is thick and excruciating. Finally, he speaks again. "They told me it's your first time." He says it quietly, as if ashamed. You just nod, a part of the product being sold, the illusion of innocence, a commodity that could fetch a higher price. Whether it's true or not is irrelevant. It's what he paid for. The whole encounter is a masterclass in awkwardness. There is no dramatic struggle. There is no passion. There is only a clumsy, sad transaction. He is not cruel, but he is not kind either. He is just there. A stranger's wait in the dark. You close your eyes and retreat to a place deep inside yourself. A small, quiet room in your mind where you can't be touched. You focus on the sound of the candle sputtering, on the scratchy feel of the straw mattress against your back, on the distant sound of laughter from another world. It's over quickly. He gets up, adjusts his clothing, and avoids looking you in the eye. He places a few coins on the stool. They clink loudly in the silence. "Thank you," he mutters, and then he is gone, his footsteps retreating down the stairs. You lie there for a long time after the door closes, staring at the ceiling. The shadows dance. You don't feel violated, not in the way you feared. You just feel empty, hollowed out. It was the battle. It was the battle. It was just business. A profoundly weird, depressing, and strangely mundane form of business. This is a truth that is often lost. While abuse and violence were terrifyingly real risks of the profession, many encounters were likely just this: a grim, silent exchange. A historical curiosity that speaks volumes about the era is the existence of so-called syntaxes. Some municipalities, while publicly condemning the trade, would levy a special tax on brothels and prostitutes. So in a way, your sad, awkward encounter just help to fund the repair of a city bridge, or pay a town guard's salary. Historians still debate the full extent and purpose of these taxes, but they point to a society deeply conflicted, trying to profit from the very thing it claimed to abhor. Slowly you sit up. Your body aches, but not from a fight. It's a dull ache of resignation. You look at the coins on the stool glinting in the candlelight. They are real. The roof over your head is real. This is the price. You reach out and take the coins, their metal cool against your skin. You have survived. But you wonder, with a cold certainty, how much of you is left. The coins the merchant left feel heavy in your palm. They represent a turning point. You are no longer just an apprentice, you are an earner. But as you will quickly learn, earning money and keeping it are two very different things. The next morning you present the coins to Agnes. It's part of the ritual of the house. She takes them without a word and drops them into her large locked cash box. The sound of the metal hitting other coins is both satisfying and hollow. You have contributed. Agnes then performs her own form of accounting. She sits at a large wooden table, a piece of slate and a chalk stick in front of her. This is the brutal economics of your new life. All right, she begins, making a mark on the slate. For your lodging this week, 2 pennies. For your food, 3. For the firewood to keep you from freezing, another 1. The candle in your room last night, a farthing. She continues down the list, her voice a monotonous drone. There's a charge for the lye soap you used to wash. There's a charge for the wine used to rinse your hair. There's a charge for the thread Isabel used to mend your dress. Every small comfort, every necessity has a price tag, and it is all being tallied against your earnings. By the time she is done, the handful of coins the merchant left you has been completely swallowed by your expenses. In fact, you are even deeper in debt to her than you were yesterday. It's a masterful predatory system. You work, you earn, but the house consumes it all. It ensures you can never save enough to leave. You are trapped not by bars on the windows, but by a balance sheet. This system of debt bondage was the invisible chain that kept many women in these houses for their entire working lives. The actual prices and currencies of the medieval period are a wonderfully confusing mess that historians love to argue about. A penny in one part of England might be worth more or less than a penny 100 miles away, and then you have groats, shillings, florins, and nobles. For you, the names don't matter. What matters is the simple, crushing math. What you make is never as much as what you owe. One evening, you watch as Marie argues with Agnes. A client, a wealthy-looking man in a fur-trimmed cloak, had given Marie an entire silver groat, a significant sum, as a personal gift. Marie tries to hide it, but Agnes has eyes everywhere. She confronts Marie, demanding the coin for the house. It was a gift, Marie insists, her voice shrill. He gave it to me. Everything you are, you owe to this house, Agnes retorts, her voice dangerously quiet. The dress you wear, the roof that shelters you, the face that he found so pleasing. I paid for the lead that made it pale. Therefore, the coin is mine. The argument is short and one-sided. Agnes, of course, wins. Marie surrenders the coin, her face a mask of fury and defeat. You learn a valuable lesson. There is no such thing as a personal gift. There is only house revenue. This economic reality forces a strange and sometimes dangerous creativity. Women would develop their own secret economies. A client might be persuaded to buy you a gift from a street vendor, a ribbon, a pastry, a small trinket. These items, obtained outside the house, could be kept, or more likely, bartered with other women for small favors. It was a tiny rebellion against Igna's total financial control. The most bizarre and slightly disgusting side hustle that some women reportedly engaged in involved their client's laundry. If a man stayed the night, his shirt or small clothes might need washing. The women would offer to do it for a small off-the-books fee. This provided a pittance of independent income. And in a world where you own nothing, a single, untaxed penny felt like a fortune. The historical evidence for these microeconomies is thin, pieced together from court records and satirical poems, but it speaks to a desperate need for agency. You start to see the house not as a home, but as a business where you are both the primary product and the most exploited laborer. You see the constant, wearying hustle in the other women. You see Isabel subtly fettering a client into buying her sweet wine, which she then trades with the cook for a slightly larger portion of stew. You see Marie arming a man into losing a game of dice, where the stakes are a few small coins that she quickly palms before Agnes can see. It's a relentless, exhausting game. You must manage the client's desires, Agnes' greed, and your own crushing debt. You lie awake at night, not thinking about the men, but about the numbers. You try to calculate how many clients it would take to pay off your debt, but the number is always impossibly large, a mountain you can never hope to climb. The coins jingle in Agnes' box, a constant reminder of how much you are worth and how little of it you will ever get to keep. A few weeks into your new life, you wake up with a cough. It's a deep, rattling thing that shakes your whole body. Your head throbs, and a feverish heat spreads behind your eyes. You are sick. In your old life, this meant a day or two of misery, perhaps a herbal tea from your mother, and then a slow recovery. Here, it's a catastrophe. You try to hide it. You get dressed, you go downstairs, but your movements are slow and clumsy. The cough escapes you in a ragged bark. Agnes' sharp eyes miss nothing. She puts the back of her hand to your forehead. Fever, she says, her voice flat and devoid of sympathy. You're useless to me like this. Go back to your room. And don't come out until you're well. She is not sending you to your room to rest and recover. She is quarantining a defective product. A sick woman is a drain on resources, consuming food and firewood without generating income. Worse, a sick woman could infect the others, shutting down the entire business. You trudge back up to your cold little room and crawl into the lumpy straw mattress. And you lie there, for hours, then for days. No one comes to check on you, save for a bowl of thin, watery gruel and a jug of water left outside your door once a day. The isolation is complete. The distant sounds of the house, the laughter, the music, the creak of the stairs, feel like they are coming from a different world. You are terrified, not just of the sickness itself, but of what it means. What if you don't get better? What will Agnes do with you? You've heard whispered stories of women who got too sick or too weak. They were simply put out on the street, left to fend for themselves, their debts magically forgotten now that they were no longer a potential asset. The world of professional medicine is completely inaccessible to you. A university-trained physician was incredibly expensive, a luxury reserved for the wealthy elite. His knowledge, based on the theories of Galen and the Four Humors, probably wouldn't have been much help anyway. He would have diagnosed you with an imbalance of phlegm and likely prescribed a costly, undisgusting concoction of ground-up gemstones and exotic spices, or perhaps a good old-fashioned blunt your humors. But even if you could afford him, he wouldn't come here. A respectable doctor would not set foot in a house like this, for fear of ruining his own reputation. You belong to a class of people who are considered morally, and therefore physically contaminated. Your sickness is seen not as a medical condition, but as a symptom of your sinful life. This is a key point that is often misunderstood. The line between medicine and morality in the medieval period was incredibly blurry. Sickness, especially diseases associated with sexual contact, were often viewed as divine punishment. While we now understand the germ theory of disease, they understood it through a lens of sin and retribution. There were even specific saints to pray to for specific ailments, turning healthcare into a spiritual negotiation. So, you are left to your own devices. You remember fragments of folk remedies from your childhood. You drink all the water you can. You try to sleep. You pray to saints you only half remember. You are your own doctor, your own nurse, and your own patient. One afternoon, the door creaks open. It's Isabeau. She slips into the room, a small bundle clutched in her hand. She looks nervously over her shoulder, terrified of being caught by Agnes. Here, she whispers, pressing the bundle into your hand. It's a poultice, yarrow and onion. My grandmother swore by it. Put it on your chest. It might help the cough. It's an act of incredible kindness and incredible risk. If Agnes found out, Isabeau would be punished severely. But she did it anyway. It's another glimpse of that fragile, hidden solidarity, a flicker of humanity in a deeply inhumane system. The poultice smells foul, but you apply it to your chest, its warmth a small comfort. The cheese tastes like the most exquisite delicacy. But more than the folk remedy or the food, it's the act itself that gives you strength. You are not entirely alone. The fever breaks a day later. The cough lingers, but the worst is over. When you finally emerge from your room, pale and weak but alive, Agnes just gives you a curt nod. Good, she says. You can serve drinks tonight. Don't overdo it. You have recovered, but the experience has left a permanent mark. You now understand with chilling clarity that your health is your only true capital. There is no safety net. No doctor will come for you. No one will care for you, except perhaps for the secret, stolen kindness of another woman who knows exactly how precarious your existence is. Your body is your livelihood, and you have just been given a terrifying lesson in how quickly it can all be taken away. As you settle back into the rhythm of the house, a new fear begins to take root, a shadow far more persistent and terrifying than any cough or fever. It's a quiet, creeping dread that occupies your thoughts during the day and haunts your dreams at night. It's the fear of a missed monthly bleeding, the terror of a swelling belly, the shadow of pregnancy. For the other women of the town, a pregnancy is a blessing, a sign of God's favor, the fulfillment of their wifely duty. For you, it is a death sentence. Not a literal one, perhaps, but a professional one. A pregnant prostitute is a paradox, an unsaleable good. Your entire livelihood is built on the temporary, consequence-free fantasy you provide for men. A pregnancy shatters that illusion with undeniable, physical proof of consequence. Agnes would not tolerate it. You've seen the cold, hard look in her eyes. A pregnant woman in her house is a liability. She would be thrown out long before her condition became obvious, cast aside like a broken tool. Your debt to her would mean nothing. So you begin to watch, to listen. You become hyper-aware of your own body, tracking the cycles of the moon and the cycles within you with a desperate, fearful precision. Every month is a silent, anxious prayer, culminating in a wave of profound, secret relief. You see the same anxiety mirrored in the other women. You see Isabel, her face pale and drawn for a few days, her usual calm replaced by a brittle tension, until one morning she appears with a quiet, exhausted smile that only you understand. You see Marie snapping at everyone, her temper even shorter than usual, her hand subconsciously drifting to her lower abdomen, until the crisis passes. It's a secret, shared trauma, a monthly cycle of terror and reprieve that binds you together more tightly than any formal guild oath. This constant, overwhelming fear is the central, unspoken reality of your existence. It dictates everything. It's the reason for the whispered conversations in the dark corners of the kitchen, the reason for the secret knowledge passed from woman to woman. Your survival, and the survival of the business, depends on one thing above all else: not getting pregnant. The official view of the church was, of course, absolute. Any attempt to prevent conception was a grave sin, a violation of God's will, interfering with the primary, procreative purpose of the marital act, and you weren't even married. Theologians wrote lengthy treatises on the subject, condemning it in the strongest possible terms. But the men who wrote these treatises were not the ones facing the life-altering consequences of an unwanted pregnancy. Their condemnations were abstract theological principles. Your fear was a concrete, daily reality. One of the more bizarre beliefs from the period, held by some medical thinkers, was the idea of the wandering womb. They believed a woman's uterus was a free-floating organ, almost like an independent creature within her body. If a woman was deprived of intercourse for too long, her womb might become sad or alone wander around her body, causing all sorts of ailments, from shortness of breath to hysteria. It's a hilariously strange concept, but it underlines how profoundly misunderstood the female body was. To the men writing the medical texts, your insides were a mysterious, slightly frightening landscape governed by bizarre, unknowable forces. For you, however, your body is not a mystery. It is a battlefield. And the stakes are impossibly high. The fears are constant, low hum beneath the surface of your life. It's there when you're serving drinks in the bathish, when you're forcing a laugh at a client's joke, when you're lying in the dark of your small room. you start to pay closer attention to the hushed conversations between Isabel and Marie. You hear them mention herbs with strange names, talk of rituals tied to the phase of the moon. They speak in a kind of code, a shared language of desperation. You realize that there is a whole world of secret knowledge here, a hidden science of survival that exists entirely outside the world of male doctors and priests. It is a dangerous knowledge cobbled together from folklore, superstition, and generations of trial and error. It is unreliable and often perilous, but it is all you have. The shadow in your belly is a constant threat, and you know, with a cold certainty, that you will soon have to learn the dark arts of how to keep it at bay. Your education in survival is about to enter its most critical and most dangerous chapter. The moment comes on a damp Tuesday morning. Your relief has failed to arrive. It's only a few days late, but in your world, a few days is an eternity. Panic, cold and sharp, begins to prickle at the edges of your composure. You manage to get through the day's chores in a numb haze, but the knot in your stomach tightens with every passing hour. That evening you find Isabel alone, mending a shift by the low light of the fire. The other women are busy with clients or asleep. The house is quiet. You hover near her for a moment, unable to form the words. She looks up, and she knows. She sees the terror in your eyes, the same terror she has felt herself a dozen times. She doesn't say anything. She simply puts down her sewing, takes your hand, and leads you out the back door into the small, sodden garden where the house herbs are grown. The night air is cold and smells of wet earth and decay. Here, in the shadows, away from the prying ears of Agnes, the real lessons begin. You are being initiated into the secret world of folk gynecology. You must act quickly, Isabel whispers, her voice urgent. The longer you wait, the harder it becomes, the more dangerous. She begins to point out the plants, her finger a pale sliver in the moonlight. This one, she says, touching the leaf of a feathery green plant. Tansy, you make a tea. Strong, but not too strong. Too much, and it will poison you. She moves to another, and this is penurial, even more powerful, even more dangerous. A woman in a house I was in before. She took too much. She bled for a week and then she was gone. This is not a gentle herbalist store. This is a lesson in brinksmanship. The plants she is showing you are known as emmenagogues, substances that can stimulate or increase menstrual flow. The hope was that by inducing a powerful uterine contraction, they could dislodge a potential pregnancy. The line between a dose that worked and a dose that could cause catastrophic internal bleeding, liver failure, or death was terrifyingly thin. It was a gamble, every single time. Isabel then tells you about things that aren't in the garden. She speaks of silphium, a plant so famously effective as a contraceptive in the ancient world that the Romans literally harvested it into extinction. Its stylized seed pod was even stamped onto the coins of the city of Cyrene. By your time, it is just a legend, a whispered myth of a miracle plant that no longer exists. Its story is a haunting reminder of how desperate the search for control has always been. She speaks of other methods too, timing. There are safe days, she explains, outlining a version of the rhythm method, a theory of fertility that was, at best, a wild guess. The understanding of ovulation and the menstrual cycle was centuries away. Her theory, passed down through generations of women, is a jumble of folklore and observation, likely no more effective than a lucky guess. Historians still debate the true efficacy of these herbal abortifacients. Modern science has confirmed that some of these plants, like penurial, do contain compounds that can induce uterine contractions and are genuinely toxic, but the dosages described in old folk recipes are wildly inconsistent. The potency of a plant could vary depending on the soil, the time of year it was harvested, and how it was prepared. For every woman it might have worked for, there's another for whom it did nothing, and another still for whom it was a fatal poison. It was, in essence, a game of Russian roulette played with weeds. You listen, your mind reeling, trying to absorb every word. This is forbidden knowledge. A woman possessing such information, an expert in these matters, could be accused of witchcraft. The line between a healer and a witch was often determined by who was telling the story and whether the outcome was successful. If a woman provided a remedy that saved a life, she was a wise woman. If her remedy led to death, or was used to prevent a birth, she could be burned for it. Isabel put her hand on your shoulder. Her hand is trembling slightly. It is a sin, she whispers, so quietly you can barely hear her. The priest says so. But a child with no name, no father, left to die on a church step, is that not a greater sin? In that moment, you see the profound, tragic weight these women carry. They are forced to become their own doctors, their own pharmacists, their own moral philosophers, navigating a world of impossible choices. They are trying to carve out a sliver of control over their own bodies in a society that grants them none. She gives your shoulder a final, firm squeeze. Tomorrow, she says, we will make a tea. You go back to your room, but you don't sleep. Your head is full of the names of plants, the whispered warnings, the impossible odds. The shadow in your belly feels a little bigger, a little more real. But now, for the first time, you have something to fight it with. A dangerous, unreliable, potentially deadly weapon, but a weapon nonetheless. Your education in the dark arts has begun. The next day, the world seems different. Every plant in the garden, every weed growing between the cobblestones, now looks like either a promise or a threat. Your education in this dangerous apothecary continues, not just with his ABAS whispered lessons, but with your own desperate observations. You learn to see the world through a new lens, the lens of a back alley pharmacist. Isabel takes you with her on an errand to the market, a rare trip outside the house. Ostensibly, you are there to buy onions and bread for the kitchen, but his ABA's real purpose is different. She guides you away from the main stalls into the narrow, crowded alleys where the fringe dwellers operate. Here you find the herbwives and the cunning men, the unlicensed purveyors of folk medicine. You approach an old woman sitting on a stool, a collection of dried roots, leaves, and bundled twigs spread out on a rough blanket before her. She has a face like a dried apple and eyes that seem to see right through you. Isabel, with a series of quiet, coded words, purchases a small, cloth-wrapped packet of dried, feathery leaves. It's tansy, more potent than the fresh leaves from the garden. The old woman's gaze lingers on you. For a woman's troubles, she rasps a statement, not a question. She is part of the same secret network, a supplier in the hidden economy of female biology. These women were vital to their communities, offering remedies for everything from colic to toothaches. But they walked a fine line. Their knowledge was power, and powerful women were often feared. Many of the women accused in later witch trials were simply these local herbalists, whose magic was nothing more than a deep understanding of botany. Back in the house, Isabel shows you how to prepare the herbs. Not a rolling boil, she instructs, as you steep the tansy in hot water. It will burn away the strength. The resulting tea is a bitter, greenish-brown liquid that smells like medicine and earth. You stare at it, your stomach churning. This is the potion that is supposed to save you. Your lessons expand beyond the Eminago gaze. Isabel points out other plants and their uses, a litany of folk wisdom. She shows you Queen Anne's lace, a common wildflower. The seeds, she whispers, chewed after he is gone. After he is gone, every day. For centuries, the seeds of this plant, also known as wild carrot, were used as a postcoital contraceptive. And here's a fascinating bit of trivia: modern science has actually confirmed this one, to a degree. Studies have shown that extracts from wild carrot seeds can disrupt implantation and interfere with the earliest stages of pregnancy in some animals. It's one of the rare cases where the folk wisdom actually had a verifiable, scientific basis. Of course, the dosage and efficacy for you would be a complete guess, but for every plant that might have worked, there were 10 that were useless or worse. You learn about rue, another bitter herb believed to be a powerful contraceptive. It's also a plant that can cause severe stomach pain and liver damage. You hear whispers of cotton root bark, brought by traders from distant lands, and even tree bark from the common juniper, all believed to hold power over the womb. The knowledge is a confusing, terrifying jumble. One woman swears by a tea made from this root. Another insists it must be that leaf, but only when picked under a full moon. The lack of standardized knowledge of any scientific method meant that everything was based on anecdote and superstition. A woman who successfully used a remedy and didn't fall pregnant would pass on the wisdom, convinced it had worked. She had no way of knowing if she was never pregnant in the first place. For every success story, there were countless silent failures. The most debated aspect among historians is how much of this was common knowledge versus specialized, secret lore. Some argue that a basic understanding of these women's herbs was widespread among the female population, a necessary part of life in a world without modern medicine. Others contend that the most potent and dangerous knowledge, particularly concerning abortifacients, was closely guarded by a select few, like the herb wives or madams like Agnes, who would dispense it for a price. That night, clutching the cup of bitter tansy tea, you understand the desperation that fueled this whole hidden science. You are about to ingest a substance that Isabel herself warned could be a poison, based on the advice of a woman you just met, in the hopes of solving a problem that could ruin your life. It is the ultimate leap of faith, a gamble based on nothing but folklore and fear. You close your eyes and drink it. It's acrid and vile, and it burns a path down your throat. Now all you can do is wait. You have put your trust in the apothecary of dangerous herbs, in the whispered wisdom of women who, like you, were just trying to survive in a world that gave them no safe choices. You wait for the cramps. You pray they will not be the kind that kill you. The tansy tea churns in your stomach, a bitter testament to your fear. But Isabea's lessons are not over. She knows that these herbal remedies are unpredictable, a roll of the dice. And so, she initiates you into the next, even more desperate, layer of protection, the world of physical barriers. This is knowledge that is never spoken of above a whisper. It is earthy, intimate, and deeply taboo. That evening in the quiet of your small room, Isabel unwraps a piece of cloth. Inside are a few small, strange objects. If the herbs fail, she says, her voice slow and practical, or if you fear a client is not careful, these can sometimes help. The first thing she shows you is a wad of wool, tightly wound and soaked in something that smells of vinegar and honey. You must push it up, as far as it will go, before he comes to you, she explains, her tone clinical, like a master craftsman explaining a tool of the trade. The wool makes a wall, the honey makes it difficult for his seed to swim. The vinegar, it is said to kill the seed. This is a primitive form of diaphragm or cervical cap. The idea of blocking the cervix was not new. Women had been experimenting with it for thousands of years. Ancient Egyptian texts describe similar methods, using crocodile dung mixed with honey. It seems every culture found its own local ingredients for this particular task. She then shows you a small, hard lump of what looks like dark wax. This is resin from a pine tree, she says. You warm it in your hands until it is soft, then shape it. It makes a better seal than the wool. You stare at these pathetic, desperate little objects. A wad of wool, a lump of tree sap. These are your shield, your armor against a life-altering consequence. The effectiveness of these methods was, to put it mildly, questionable. A wad of wool could easily be dislodged. A resin suppository might create a partial barrier, but it was far from foolproof. The acidity of the vinegar might have had a minor spermicide effect, but it could also cause irritation and damage to the sensitive internal tissues. And then comes the most shocking lesson. Isabel gestures to a small, dry patty of what you first assume is dirt or clay. And if you have nothing else, she says, her voice dropping even lower, animal dung. Sheep is best. You recoil. The thought is viscerally horrifying. But you force yourself to listen, to understand. In a world with no access to latex, no understanding of modern gynecology, women used what they had. The logic, as grim as it was, followed a certain path. They needed something thick, something that would form a paste and create a barrier. Dung, mixed with other substances, was one of the few materials available that fit the description. This was just a desperate measure of the poor. The use of pessaries, or vaginal suppositories, was documented in some medical texts of the time. Physicians, all male, would prescribe concoctions of herbs, minerals, and yes, sometimes animal products, to be inserted for various female complaints. The historical debate here is fierce: were these methods seen as legitimate, if crude medicine, or were they always the stuff of back alleys and brothels? The line is incredibly blurry. Many practices that seem shocking to us were likely considered standard, if unpleasant, folk medicine. What you are learning is that these methods were not just about preventing pregnancy. They were part of a broader, desperate attempt at hygiene. Women believed these barriers could also prevent the transmission of disease, a hope that was almost entirely unfounded. They were fighting an invisible enemy with weapons made of wool and dung. You try to imagine the reality of it, the discomfort, the risk of infection, the sheer soul-crushing indignity of it all. To have to perform this secret, messy ritual before every encounter, to live in such constant, intimate fear of your own body's biology. It is a level of desperation you had never conceived of. Isabel sees the look on your face. It is better than the alternative, she says, her voice hard. She is right. The risk of internal injury or infection from a poorly made pessary was real, but it was a lesser fear than the certainty of being cast out, pregnant and alone. That night, you lie in bed, the bitter taste of tansy still in your mouth, your mind filled with images of wool resin, and worse, you feel a profound, aching sorrow for Isabel, for Marie, for the woman who died from too much penurial, for the countless, nameless women throughout history who were forced to resort to such measures. This is the hidden history that no one records, not the history of kings and battles, but the history of the body. The secret, desperate, and sometimes disgusting lengths women went to in order to survive. You have been given the knowledge, and you know with a sickening certainty that a day will come when you will have to use it. The cramps in your belly have started. You pray they are from the tea, and not from something else. The cramps intensify through the night, a deep, rhythmic clenching in your lower belly. By morning you are rewarded with the sight you've been praying for, the dark stain of blood. The relief is so overwhelming it almost brings you to your knees. The tansy tea, or perhaps just sheer luck, has worked. The crisis for this month is averted. But your education is not complete. The fear of pregnancy is only half the battle. The other half is the constant, immediate need for cleanliness. This is not about hygiene in the modern sense of germ theory. It is a ritualistic, almost superstitious act of trying to wash away the physical and spiritual residue of your work. After the client is gone, after every single encounter, the ritual begins. Isabel shows you what is required. It's a process known as douching, an internal rinsing meant to cleanse the body. But this is not done with gentle, sterile water. The concoctions used are a horrifying menu of caustic and dangerous substances. She shows you a large jug kept in a cool corner of the scullery. This is our rinse, she says. It's a mixture of water, sharp vinegar, and salt brine. The logic in their minds was that if a substance was good for pickling vegetables and preserving meat, it must be good for preserving the insides of a woman. They believed the harshness of the solution would kill the man's seed and wash away any potential for disease. You are instructed to use a primitive syringe, a device made from an animal bladder attached to a hollowed-out wooden or bone nozzle. It's a crude, clumsy tool. The process is uncomfortable, invasive, and painful. The vinegar and brine burn, a sharp, stinging sensation that makes you gasp. It feels less like cleaning and more like a punishment. Every time, Isabel instructs, her face grim. No exceptions. This practice was incredibly widespread, not just among prostitutes but among married women as well, who used it as a misguided form of post-coital contraception. The damage it caused was immense. The harsh solutions would strip away the natural, protective flora of the vagina, leaving the tissues raw and vulnerable. Instead of preventing infection, this ritual actually made women more susceptible to it. It could lead to chronic pain, internal sores, and a host of other debilitating conditions. But vinegar and brine were the gentle options. Isabel tells you of other, more potent rinses used by women who were truly desperate. She speaks of solutions containing alum, a mineral salt that is a powerful astringent, causing the tissues to shrink and tighten. While it might have felt cleaner, it was also incredibly damaging over time. The most horrific and little-known practice involved solutions containing heavy metals. For those who could afford it or had access through a less than scrupulous apothecary, this was the nuclear option. Small amounts of mercury or even lead would be dissolved into the dosing solution. The thinking was that these powerful substances, known to be poisons, must surely be powerful enough to kill anything unwanted inside the body. You listen to this in stunned silence. The idea of voluntarily, repeatedly rinsing your body with a solution of mercury, the same substance used to treat the most virulent diseases, the same substance that could make a man's hair fall out and his mind unravel, is beyond comprehension. It speaks to a level of fear and self-loathing that is hard to fathom. It's a form of ritualized self-harm, born from a desperate desire for contrariety in a life that felt contaminated and out of control. Historians are divided on how common these extreme additives were. Some believe they were rare, a last resort for the most desperate. Others argue that, given the general medieval enthusiasm for using mercury as a cure-all for everything from skin blemishes to syphilis, its use in this context might have been more prevalent than the scant records suggest. It's a history that exists in the shadows, in the toxicological evidence found in the bones of the long dead. You perform the ritual for the first time, your hands fumbling with the crude bladder syringe. The burning sensation makes you want to cry out, but you stifle it. This is your new reality. The pain is part of the job. It is the price of cleanliness. You look at Isabel and Marie, and you see them in a new light. You understand that their hard, cynical exteriors are shields built up over years of enduring this secret, painful regimen. Every day they subject themselves to these caustic, damaging rituals, all in the name of continuing to work to survive. The physical act is painful enough, but the psychological toll is worse. The ritual reinforces the idea that you are inherently unclean, that your body is something that must be constantly, violently purged. It is a profound violation, one that you must inflict upon yourself day after day. The shadow of pregnancy may have receded for now, but it has been replaced by the burning, painful reality of the cleansing. The weeks turn into months. The rhythms of the house become your own. The application of the lead paint, the forced smiles, the painful ritual cleansing, it all becomes a grim routine. You learn to navigate the moods of the clients, the tempers of the other women, and the ever-watchful eye of Agnes. You are surviving. But survival in this world means constantly staring into the abyss of risk. One evening, a new woman arrives at the house. Her name is Eleanor, and she is not a desperate farm girl like you were. She is older, more polished. She comes from another house in a different city, one that was shut down by a sudden, zealous crackdown from the local magistrate. She carries with her an air of weary experience and a small, heavy box of personal remedies. She is the one who introduces you to the deadliest medicines of all. One night, you see Eleanor in a corner of the kitchen, carefully measuring a tiny amount of a silvery liquid from a small glass vial. It's quicksilver. Mercury, she's not adding it to a dosing solution. She is swallowing it. She catches you staring. A grim, knowing look passes between you. For protection, she says simply. She explains that in the city she came from, it was common practice. A small dose of mercury, taken orally, was believed to render a woman sterile. It was the ultimate preventative, a way to build a permanent fortress against pregnancy. The idea is both fascinating and horrifying. You've seen what mercury does. You've seen men in the city, treated for syphilis with mercury rubs and pills, who suffer from tremors, tooth loss, and a creeping madness. They call it the salivation sickness, as the poison makes them drool uncontrollably, and Eleanor is willingly ingesting it. This practice represents the absolute peak of medieval medical desperation. Mercury was a substance of immense power and mystery. Alchemists believed it was one of the core elements of the universe. Doctors, observing its violent effects on the body, concluded that it must be a powerful purifier, capable of driving out any disease or impurity through sheer force. The logic was brutal. If a little bit makes you sick, it must be fighting something. Therefore, a very, very little bit taken regularly might prevent you from getting sick in the first place. Eleanor explains her rationale with a chilling, fatalistic logic. The daily risk of pregnancy is a constant, high-stakes terror. The slow, creeping effects of mercury poisoning are a distant, abstract threat. She has chosen to trade a clear and present danger for a future one. It is a terrible bargain, but one she has made with open eyes. She also tells you about lead. Some women, she says, would drink wine that had been stored in lead-lined vessels or even ingest small amounts of lead filings, believing it had a similar contraceptive effect. The science behind this, though they didn't know it, was tragically sound. Both lead and mercury are potent toxins that can disrupt the endocrine system, interfere with the menstrual cycle, and, in sufficient doses, cause sterility. They also, of course, destroy your nervous system, your kidneys, and your brain. The historical evidence for these practices is eerie and indirect. It's found in the skeletal remains of women from this period, particularly those buried in unconsecrated ground, or near known red light districts. Known red light districts. Forensic archaeologists have found startlingly high concentrations of lead and mercury in their bones, silent testimony to the desperate measures they took. The question that historians still grapple with is one of intent. Was this a conscious, if misguided, attempt at birth control, or was it the cumulative effect of a lifetime of toxic cosmetics and quack medicines for other ailments? The truth is likely a grim combination of both. You watch Eleanor over the next few weeks. She is good at her job, sought after by the more discerning clients. But you see the subtle signs. A slight tremor in her hands that she tries to hide, her gums when she smiles, or starting to show a faint, dark line, a classic sign of heavy metal poisoning. She is paying for her protection with her own life force, one tiny, silvery drop at a time. This knowledge adds another layer to the house's atmosphere of quiet dread. You are surrounded by poison. It's on your face in the form of lead paint. It's in the cleansing solutions of vinegar and alum. And now, it's being willingly consumed as a medicine. One day, you see Isabel watching Eleanor with a look of profound pity. She is buying time, Isabel whispers to you, but the price is too high. You look at your own reflection in the polished metal mirror. You see the pale, lead-painted mask you wear every night. You think of the burning, stinging douches. You think of the bitter tansy tea. You had thought you were learning the arts of survival, but you now realize you are simply learning to choose your poison. Each method, each secret remedy, is a different path on the same road. A road that chips away at your health, your spirit, your very life. The house is not just a place of work. It is a laboratory of slow, self-inflicted harm, all in the name of seeing the next dawn. The fragile ecosystem of the house is shattered one grey, drizzling morning. The crisis doesn't come from a violent client or a raid by the city watch. It comes from within, quietly and tragically. It comes from Marie. For the past week, Marie, the fiery redhead, had been uncharacteristically subdued. Her usual sharp-tongued wit was gone, replaced by a sullen, worried silence. She moved with a strange, careful slowness, and you noticed her refusing the nightly cup of ale offered to the women after the clients had left. You, Isabel, and Eleanor all knew the signs. You recognized the familiar terror in her eyes. Her back alley magic, whatever combination of herbs, barriers, and hope she had been using, had failed. She had managed to hide her growing panic from Agnes, but she couldn't hide the physical reality. That morning a scream tears through the quiet of the house. It's a sound of pure agony coming from the small room Marie shares with Isabel. You rush to the door to find a scene of quiet horror. Marie is on the floor, curled in on herself, her face pale and slick with sweat. Isabel is kneeling beside her, her own face a mask of fear, trying to stanch a flow of blood that is spreading in a dark, terrifying pool on the floorboards. Marie had become desperate. She had sought out help not from Isabel, but from someone outside the house, an old woman known for performing the most dangerous procedures, a back alley abortionist. The methods for such procedures were brutal and lethally dangerous. They often involved inserting a sharp or unclean object, a stick, a wire, a sharpened bird bone, into the uterus to induce a miscarriage. The risk of perforation, internal hemorrhage, and rampant infection was astronomically high. It was the absolute last resort for a woman with no other options. Agnes appears in the doorway, her face like thunder. But when she sees the blood, her anger is instantly replaced by something else called pragmatic fear. This is a disaster for her business. A dead woman in her house would bring questions, scrutiny, the unwanted attention of the authorities. Get her cleaned up, Agnes hisses at Isabel. Now, there is no talk of fetching a doctor. That would be an admission of what happened to you. This is a secret that must be buried quickly and quietly. You and Isabel do your best. You help Marie back to her bed, which is quickly soaked through. You bring basins of water and drags, but it's like trying to empty the ocean with a teaspoon. Marie is barely conscious, her breath coming in shallow, ragged gasps. She is bleeding to death, right in front of you. This was the ultimate, unspoken risk, the conclusion to the story that begins with a late period and a cup of bitter tea. When the herbs and pessaries failed, this was the final, desperate gamble. And Marie had lost. The historical record is grimly sprinkled with the outcomes of such tragedies. Court documents detail the discovery of bodies, and coroner's inquests, even in the medieval period, sometimes noted the telltale signs of a botched, clandestine procedure. But for every one that was recorded, countless others were hidden, their stories ending in an unmarked grave. There is a strange and poignant debate among historians about the women who performed these procedures. Were they monstrous, greedy predators preying on the desperate? Or were they themselves tragic figures, often poor and marginalized women, providing a lethal but necessary service that no one else would, risking their own lives and freedom to do so? The truth is likely somewhere in the murky middle. As the morning wears on, Mary's breathing grows fainter. Her fiery hair is matted with sweat against the unnatural white of her skin. There is nothing you can do but watch helpless as her life slips away. She dies just as the noon bells begin to toll from the nearby church, the sound a mocking counterpoint to the silent tragedy in the room. The aftermath is swift and cold. Under the cover of darkness, Agnes has to hired men wrap Mary's body in a simple blanket. There is no shroud, no coffin. They carry her out the back way and take her to be buried in the unconsecrated ground outside the city walls, the potter's field reserved for suicides, criminals, and women like her. Her existence is being erased. The next day, it is as if Marie was never there. Her few meager possessions are gone. Her space at the table is empty. Her name is not spoken. Agnes makes it clear, with a single, terrifying glare, that the subject is closed. For a client who asks for the redhead, the answer is simple: Chess moved on. You are left with the ghost of her presence. The dark stain on the floorboards, scrubbed but still visible if you know where to look. The memory of her sharp laughter, and the visceral, gut-wrenching understanding of what happens when the back alley magic fails. The fear in the house is no longer an abstract dread. It has a face and a name. It is the face of Marie, and the price of failure is absolute. The pall of Mary's death hangs over the house for weeks. A nervous, brittle quiet replaces the usual boisterous atmosphere. The women move like ghosts, their smiles more forced, their eyes darting and fearful. Agnes is on edge, her temper shorter than ever, cracking down on the smallest infraction. The fear of another disaster makes her a strict tyrant. It's during this time that you have your first truly dangerous encounter with a client. He is a man-at-arms, a soldier in the service of a local lord, flush with new pay and overflowing with arrogance. AGS big, with a thick neck and hands like slabs of meat. From the moment he chooses you in the main room, a cold knot of dread forms in your stomach. His eyes are not just lecherous, they are cruel. He dismisses the small, candlelit room you usually use. To crown, he grunts and insists on using a larger, slightly better appointed room that is usually reserved for wealthier patrons. He is paid extra, and Agnes, eager to recoup the income lost from Mary's absence, agrees. Once in the room, his demeanor changes. The thin veneer of the paying customer peels away to reveal something ugly and entitled. He has not just paid for your time. He believes he has bought you. He is rough, his hands grabbing and bruising. He ignores your attempts to steer the encounter, to maintain the small, fragile boundaries you've learned to erect. Then he does something that sends a jolt of pure terror through you. He refuses to pay beforehand. It's one of Agnes' strictest, most unshakable rules: coin on the table before any services are rendered. It's the only real power you have. Later, he growls when you ask for the payment, shoving you back onto the bed. I'll pay when I'm satisfied. Your mind races. This is a classic tactic. He intends to take what he wants and leave. And he is counting on you being too frightened to stop him. Marie's tragic end was a result of the internal dangers of your profession. This man represents the external ones. Violence from clients was a constant, terrifying threat. While the house offered a thin layer of protection compared to working on the streets, a locked door was little defense against him, and determined to do harm. You have a choice. You can submit, endure his abuse, and hope he leaves without doing worse damage, accepting the loss of income. Or you can fight back. Not with force. He is twice your size and built of solid muscle. You have to use your wit. You remember the lessons learned not from Isabel, but from watching Agnes. You have to be smarter. You have to be quicker. You stop resisting him physically. You go limp, and you start to cry. Not loud, hysterical sobs, but quiet, pathetic, frightened whimpers. Please, sir, you whisper, your voice trembling. It's not for me. It's for the house. If she finds out, if Agnes finds out, I let you without the coin first, she'll beat me. She'll throw me out. Please, sir, I beg you. You are changing the narrative. You are no longer a defiant woman demanding her pay. You are a terrified, helpless girl caught between a brutal madam and a powerful man. You are making him the arbiter of your fate. It's a disgusting, demeaning performance, but it's a calculated one. It appeals to his sense of power, reframing the situation to flatter his ego. He pauses, looking down at you. His cruel expression flickers with a different kind of satisfaction. He likes the idea of you being terrified of your madam. It makes him feel even more powerful. She beats you, does she? He says, a smirk playing on his lips. You nod, letting a tear roll down your cheek. It works. He grunts, a sound that is almost a chuckle. He reaches into his pouch and throws a few coins onto the bedside table. There, he says, now she has no reason to beat you, but join me for my kindness. The danger has not passed, but it has shifted. You have won the first battle. You have the money. The encounter that follows is still grim and unpleasant, but the edge of raw violence has been blunted. You endured it by playing the role he wanted to see, the broken, helpless victim. It leaves a sour, bitter taste in your mouth, a feeling of self-loathing that is almost as bad as the fear. This is a skill that doesn't appear in any historical manual. The ability to read a man, to de-escalate a dangerous situation, to use psychology as a shield. The accounts of violence against prostitutes in medieval court records are depressingly common. What is not recorded are the countless times women, like you, likely used their intelligence and cunning to sidestep that violence, to survive an encounter that could have ended in serious injury or death. Historians can only speculate on these quiet moments of psychological warfare, but they were as crucial to survival as any herbal remedy. When he finally leaves, you lie in the dark, your body bruised, your spirit scraped raw. You scoop up the coins, the cold metal, a small, hard confirmation of your victory. You did not just survive a client, you survived an enemy. You learned that your mind, your ability to think and adapt under pressure, is your sharpest weapon. It is a grim and empowering realization, all at once. In the heavy, anxious days following the soldier's visit, you find yourself seeking out the company of the other women more than ever. The shared trauma of Mary's death and your own brush with violence have subtly rewoven the fabric of your relationships. The petty competitions and jealousies seem to have faded, replaced by a quiet, watchful solidarity. One afternoon, the house is empty of clients. It's a slow day, the rain outside drumming a monotonous rhythm on the roof. Agnes has gone to the market, leaving the three of you, Isabel, and Eleanor, to mind the house. A rare, unsupervised moment. Eleanor, the woman who took mercury for protection, is sitting at the main table, meticulously grinding herbs with a mortar and pestle. Not for contraception, you realize, but for a cosmetic. She's making a new batch of rouge from sandalwood and safflower, a safer alternative to the vermilion she sometimes uses. You sit down across from her, and Isabel joins you, bringing 3 small clay cups and a pitcher of watered-down wine. She pours for each of you. It's a small, illicit act of communion. This wine is for clients, not for you. But with Agnes gone, a small rebellion feels possible. For a long time, you just sit in silence, listening to the rain and the rhythmic scrape of the pestle against the stone. No one forces a smile. No one puts on a performance. For the first time, you are simply 3 women in a room, sharing a quiet moment of peace. Then Eleanor begins to talk. She speaks of the house she came from in York. She describes the madam there, a woman even colder and more grasping than Agnes. She tells a funny, tragic story about a client, a pompous guild master who got his fancy velvet hat stuck in a chimney. The story is tinged with bitterness, but as she tells it, a real, genuine smile touches her lips, and Isabel lets out a soft, unforced laugh. Isabel then shares a story of her own. From her early days in this very house, she talks about a young university student who would pay for her time not with coin, but by reading poetry to her. He was in love with the idea of her, the tragic, beautiful fallen woman of his poems. He never even touched me. She says, a wistful, complicated look in her eyes. He just wanted someone to listen to his verses about unattainable love. It was the strangest, saddest, and easiest money I ever made. These moments of shared humanity are the secret fuel that allows you to survive. They are not recorded in any chronicle. They exist only in the quiet spaces between the transactions. Prostitution in the Middle Ages is often depicted as a life of unrelenting misery and degradation, and while those elements were terrifyingly real, it's crucial to remember that these were whole people, living whole lives. They were capable of humor, friendship, and finding grace in the darkest of places. You find yourself telling them about the soldier, your voice low. You describe your fear and the trick you used to get him to pay. Eleanor nods in grim recognition. The puppeteer's trick, she says. Making the big man think HES pulling the strings, when all along, you're either one moving his hands. It's a dangerous game. Isabel reaches across the table and puts her hand over yours. You were brave, she says, and her simple, honest validation feels more precious than any coin a client could give you. This is the hidden sisterhood, not a formal guild, but a network of shared experience. They are the only ones who can truly understand the bruises on your arms, the hollowness behind your eyes after a difficult client, the monthly terror of a late bleeding. They understand the complex cocktail of self-loathing and pride you felt after outsmarting the soldier. A strange but historically documented aspect of this life was the use of house names. Many women in these establishments did not use their given names. They adopted new ones like Rose, Blanche, or Marguerite. It was a way to create a persona, a character to play, which helped to separate their work life from their inner self. It was also a practical measure of anonymity, protecting them and their families from the stigma of their profession. Historians still debate whether this was a choice made by the women for self-preservation, or a rule imposed by the madam to make her product more interchangeable and romantic. As you sit there, sharing the stolen wine, you realize you are not just the frightened girl from the alley anymore. You are becoming part of the strange, resilient tribe. You are learning their language, their codes, their survival strategies. The warmth in the room has nothing to do with the fire in the hearth. It's the fragile, flickering warmth of connection, of being seen and understood by the only people in the world who know the truth of your life. The rain stops. The watery afternoon sun breaks through the clouds. You hear the sound of the front door opening. Agnes is back. Instantly, the moment is gone. Eleanor quickly packs away her herbs. Isabel whisks the cups away. The masks slip back on, but the quiet strength of that stolen hour remains inside you, a small glowing ember against the cold. One Sunday morning, Agnes herds you and the other women out of the house. Your destination, church. This, you learn, is a mandatory weekly excursion. The irony is so thick you could choke on it. The very institution that condemns your existence with fire and brimstone demands your attendance. You walk as a group, huddled together, your faces scrubbed clean of their lead paint. your hair covered by simple, modest coats. You are dressed in the drab, legally prescribed colors of your station. The performance is one of penitence and piety. As you walk through the streets, the respectable folk of the town, the merchant's wife, the baker, the same men who might be your clients on a Tuesday night, pointedly look away, or worse, stare with open, judgmental contempt, put on public display. Inside the church, the air is cool and smells of incense and old stone. Sunlight streams through the high stained glass windows, painting jewels of color on the floor. You are not allowed to sit with the main congregation. You are directed to a specific, segregated section at the back or in a side aisle, sometimes called the sinner's pew. The priest climbs into the pulpit, a man with a fleshy face and a booming voice. And he begins his sermon. Today, his subject is the evils of lust. He thunders against the daughters of Jezebel, the vessels of impurity, the gateways to hell who lure good Christian men from the path of righteousness. He speaks of the fires of damnation that await those who trade their bodies for coin. He never once mentions the men who pay the coin. The blame in his telling rests squarely and solely on you. You sit there, head bowed, and let the words wash over you. It's another role you have to play, the repentant sinner. You look at Isabel beside you. She has her eyes closed, her hands clasped tightly, her lips moving in a silent prayer. Is she praying for forgiveness, or is she just praying for this to be over? You look at Eleanor, whose face is a mask of bored indifference, an expression she has perfected over years of enduring this weekly hypocrisy. The hypocrisy is breathtaking. The church was one of the largest landowners in Europe, and as you learn it with the Bathuses in Southwark, it was not above profiting from the very trade it so publicly condemned. The Bishop of Winchester was not an anomaly. In many cities, church-owned properties were rented out to brothels, with the rent collected by clerical officials. It was a sin that was, apparently, taxable by God's representatives on earth. This duality is one of the most fascinating and debated aspects of the medieval church's relationship with prostitution, a simultaneous act of public condemnation and private profiteering. After the sermon there is communion. You are not allowed to partake. You are deemed too impure to receive the body of Christ. You must simply watch as the rest of the congregation lines up, their faces pious and serene. As you are filing out of the church, a man presses a folded note into your hand. You glance at him. It's the weaver, a man with a wife and 4 children, a pillar of his guild. He was a client just last week. He avoids your eyes, his face a mask of solemn piety as he nods to the priest. In the street, you open the note. It's a request for your company on Thursday night. This is the central, maddening paradox of your life. You are publicly reviled and privately sought after. The same society that shames you in the daylight creates the demand for your services in the darkness. The men who condemn you the loudest are often the ones who seek you out. A particularly bizarre historical detail is the existence of specific patron saints for prostitutes, most notably Saint Mary Magdalene, but also Saint Afra and Saint Pelagia, all of whom were reformed sex workers. On the one hand, this offered women a sliver of hope, a pathway to divine redemption. On the other, it reinforced the narrative that their existence was inherently sinful and in need of radical transformation. It was a theological safety valve, offering a model for salvation while still condemning the sin. Walking back to the house, the sun feels harsh and accusing. The performance is over for another week. You have fulfilled your public duty of being shamed. Now you can return to your private duty of serving the men who have just been absolved of their sins. Agnes is waiting for you at the door. Good, she says, her voice laced with cynicism. You've all said your prayers, now get inside and make yourselves useful. You re-enter the house, the scent of incense still clinging to your clothes. You are no longer the penitent sinner. You are a worker, returning to her place of business. The whiplash of moving between these two worlds, the church and the brothel, is dizzying. You realize that both places demand a performance from you. In both, you are playing a role that society has written for you. And in both, the hypocrisy is the only thing that feels truly, unshakably real. The weekly ritual of church attendance, with its public shaming and private hypocrisy, begins to wear on you. The priest's booming condemnations, however, sometimes contain a sliver of something else. He speaks of redemption, of a path away from sin. He speaks of the Magdalene houses. These institutions, named after Saint Mary Magdalene, are presented as charitable refuges, a haven for fallen women who wish to renounce their past and dedicate their lives to piety and prayer. To the public, they are beacons of Christian charity, a testament to the Church's mercy. To you, they are a whispered rumor, a mysterious alternative to the life you now lead. One evening you ask Isabel about them. The house of penance, she says, her mouth twisting into a wry, sad smile. It is a place you can go, it is not a place you can easily leave. She tells you the story of a woman she once knew, a girl named Alice, who worked in this very house years ago. Alice had grown weary of the life, worn down by the clients and the fear. She had been swayed by the promises of the priest. One day, she packed her few belongings and presented herself at the gates of the local Magdalene house. The promise was simple: in exchange for renouncing your sinful past and committing to a life of penance, the house would provide food, shelter, and spiritual guidance. It sounded like an escape, but Isabel explains the reality. When Alice entered, the heavy oak doors were locked behind her. Her old clothes were taken and burned. Her head was shaved, a symbolic removal of her from her vanity. She was given a coarse, rough-spun habit to wear, no different from a nun's. Her life was no longer her own. The daily routine was grueling, a relentless cycle of prayer, forced confession, and hard labor. The women rose before dawn for prayers, spent their days scrubbing floors, laundering the church's linens, and spinning wool, their work sold to support the institution. They ate thin, tasteless gruel and slept on hard pallets in a communal dormitory. Silence was enforced for most of the day. Any infraction was met with harsh punishment, bread and water rations, public shaming, even flogging. It was not a refuge, it was a prison, cloaked in the language of piety. The women were not sisters in a holy order, they were an unpaid, captive workforce. Their penance was profitable. This is the dark, often overlooked side of these institutions. While they may have been founded with genuine charitable intent, many Magdalene houses or penitentiaries devolved into little more than religious workhouses. The women who entered them traded one form of exploitation for another. They were no longer selling their bodies, but their labor and their freedom were forfeit. The historical debate rages on this point: were these asylums primarily places of sincere spiritual rescue, or were they instruments of social control and economic exploitation? The answer, as is often the case, is a messy and uncomfortable both. A particularly cruel aspect of many of these houses was the indeterminate nature of the penance. A woman was not told how long she had to stay. Her release was dependent on the judgment of the Mother Superior or the overseeing priest, who had to be convinced of her sincere repentance. This could take years, decades, or for many a lifetime. They had simply traded a madam for a Mother Superior, a debt of coin for a debt of sin that could never be fully repaid. Isabea's friend Alice, after 2 years inside, managed to escape. She scaled a wall in the middle of the night and ran. But where could she go? Her old life was gone. Her name was now synonymous with the penitentiary. No respectable family would hire her. She cowed at return to Igna's house, having broken the unwritten rule of loyalty. Isabel heard she ended up on the streets, working in the darkest, most dangerous corners of the city, with no protection at all. Her escape had led her to an even worse fate. The story hangs in the air between you, a chilling cautionary tale. The promise of the Magdalene house is a mirage in the desert. It offers the illusion of water of salvation, but the reality is just a different kind of thirst, a different kind of prison. You look around at the familiar room in Igna's house. You see the worn furniture. You smell the faint scent of beeswax and spilled ale. This place is a cage, built of debt and fear. But at least here, the bars are mostly invisible. You have a sliver of autonomy. You have the stolen moments of camaraderie with Isabel and Eleanor. You have your wits, which you are learning to sharpen every day. The Magdalene house offers a different kind of cage, one with real walls, real locks, and a warden who claims to be speaking for God. You realize that for a woman in your position, there is no true escape. There are only different kinds of confinement. The choice is not between freedom and bondage, but between the devil you know and the devil you don't. And his ABA's story has just painted a terrifyingly clear picture of the devil you don't. The path to redemption, it seems, is just as dangerous as the path of sin. Life settles back into its uneasy rhythm, a precarious balance of risk and routine. But one evening, a new variable enters the equation. I'm in a ride who is different from the usual clientele of boisterous merchants and rough soldiers. He is a nobleman, or at least a very wealthy courtier, judging by the fine velvet of his doubleton and the soft leather of his boots. His name, you learn, is Sir Robert, and he carries himself with an air of quiet, effortless authority. He doesn't join the noisy crowd in the bathish. He speaks quietly with Agnes, and his eyes scan the room, passing over the other women before they land on you. There is an intensity in his gaze that is neither lecherous nor cruel. It's appraising, calculating. He asks for you. And he continues to ask for you, night after night, for the next 2 weeks. He pays well, always in gold coin, which puts Agnes in a surprisingly good mood. Your encounters with him are strange. He is not demanding or rough. He is polite, almost gentle. He brings you small gifts, a silk ribbon, a piece of marzipan, a small book of poetry. He asks you questions about your life before you came here, a topic most men avoid. You are worried. This is too good to be true. You've learned that nothing comes for free. Isabel warns you in hushed tones. Be careful, she says. Men like that, they don't see us as people. They see us as possessions they can acquire. They like to play games. Her warning proves prophetic. One evening, Sir Robert makes his offer. He wants to become your exclusive patron. He wants to set you up in your own small apartment, away from this house. He will provide you with a generous allowance, fine clothes, and a servant. You will be his kept woman, his mistress. In exchange, you will be exclusively his. You will not see other men. You will be available to him whenever he desires. It's a dazzling, terrifying proposal. It's the ultimate fantasy for a woman in your position to be rescued from the brothel by a wealthy, powerful man. To have your own space, your own money, a life of relative luxury. It's the happy ending of 100 ballads and romantic tales. But you have learned to see the strings behind the puppet show. This is not a proposal of love. It is a business transaction. He is offering to buy you, to take you from being a commonly owned good to a piece of private property. You would be trading many masters for one. But that one master would have total control. This arrangement, the kept mistress or courtesan, was a well-established social niche, particularly in the more sophisticated courts of Italy and France, and to a lesser extent in England. These women could achieve a surprising degree of wealth and influence. They were uneducated, witty, and skilled in music and conversation, providing intellectual and social companionship as much as physical. However, their position was utterly dependent on the whims of their patron. When his affection called, or when he decided to marry a woman of his own class, the mistress could be cast aside in an instant, often with nothing to show for her years of service. A fascinating aspect of this is the legal ambiguity. A mistress had no legal rights. Any gifts or property given to her could, in some cases, be reclaimed by the patron or his family. She was not a wife, not a servant, not a prostitute in the common sense. She existed in a legal and social void, her status entirely reliant on a personal relationship that had no official standing. Historians still debate the level of agency these women had. Were they savvy operators manipulating the system for their own gain, or were they just a more gilded type of victim? You think of Agnes. Her control is absolute, but it is also predictable. The rules of her house are cruel, but they are known. You are one of several women, which provides a strange, diluted kind of safety. If a client is dangerous, he may choose someone else next time. If you are sick, the house grudgingly carries on. With Sir Robert you would be alone. Your entire existence, your food, your shelter, your safety, would rest in the hands of one man. If he grew tired of you, if he became angry or violent, you would have nowhere to turn. No Isabel to offer a quiet warning. No Eleanor to share a moment of gallows humor. You would be isolated, a beautiful bird in a gilded cage. He is waiting for your answer. He smiles a confident, charming smile that does not quite reach his cold, calculating eyes. He believes he is offering you the world. He cannot comprehend that you see the prison hidden within the palace. The choice is agonizing. On one hand, a life free from the nightly degradation of the brothel, free from the lead paint and the vinegar douches. A life of comfort and ease. On the other, a life of total dependency, of isolation, a high-wire act with no safety net. You look at him, and for the first time you feel a flicker of your own power. The power to say no. It's a terrifying thought. To refuse such an offer would be madness to anyone else. But you are beginning to understand the complex algebra of survival. Sometimes the most dangerous offer is the one that looks the most attractive. You tell him you need time to think. He accepts, confident you will make the right choice. But for the first time, you are not sure which choice that is. You agonize over Sir Robert's offer for days. The gilded cage he presents as a constant temptation, a shimmering vision of warmth and security that you contrast with the grim reality of your daily life. It is during this period of intense indecision that you begin to notice something new, something that adds another layer of cold dread to your calculations. It is the cruelty of the looking glass. The looking glass in Igna's house is not a sheet of pristine, clear glass. It is a small, hand-sized piece of polished bronze, slightly convex, that lives on a shelf in the main room. It distorts as much as it reflects, but it doesn't lie. One morning, as you are applying the thick, white layer of CERUs to your face, you see it. A tiny fine line branching out from the corner of your eye. It's almost invisible, a little crease in the skin that was there a month ago. You lean closer, your heart sinking. You run your finger over it. The lead paint you use every day, the very substance meant to create an illusion of youthful perfection, is a double-edged sword. While it covers blemishes, it's toxic. Drying properties are slowly ruining your skin, aging you prematurely. You are painting on a mask of youth that is simultaneously stealing the very thing it is meant to portray. Panic, cold and familiar, clutches at you. In your profession, youth is not just an asset, it is the entire currency. Your value is directly, brutally tied to the smoothness of your skin, the brightness of your eyes, the fullness of your lips. An aging prostitute is a walking contradiction, an object of pity or scorn. You start to observe the other women with a new, fearful intensity. You look at Isabel, who is perhaps only 5 or 6 years older than you. You see the faint, feathery lines around her own eyes, which she expertly conceals with her makeup. You see the slight weariness in her posture, the way she sometimes presses a hand to her lower back after a long night. She is still beautiful, still sought after, but she is on the same path as you, just a few steps further down the road. Then you look at Agnes. It's hard to guess her age. She could be 40 or 60. Her face is a roadmap of a hard life, her skin wrinkled and sallow. You suddenly see her not just as a tyrant, but as a graduate of this very life. She was once a girl like you, then a woman like Isabel. Now she is on the other side. Her power comes from the fact that she is no longer sellable. She has transitioned from product to manager. It's the only viable retirement plan this profession offers. This fear of aging was, of course, not unique to prostitutes. Medieval society was obsessed with youth, especially in women, as it was directly linked to fertility and marriageability. But for a woman in your position, the stakes were infinitely higher. There was no husband to grow old with, no children to care for you in your old age. This anxiety gave rise to a whole industry of desperate, often bizarre, anti-aging remedies. Some were relatively harmless, like face masks made of honey and almond meal. Others were more extreme. It was believed that washing your face in the dew collected from a field on May Day could preserve youth. A more disgusting, and thankfully rare belief was that bathing in or consuming the blood of young, healthy individuals could restore vitality, a piece of Gothic folklore that hints at a deep-seated terror of mortality. Historians debate how seriously these more extreme ideas were taken, but they illustrate the desperation to halt the relentless march of time. Sir Robert's offer suddenly appears in a new light. His patronage could be a shield against this inevitability. As his kept mistress, your position would be, theoretically, secure at least for a while. Your value would be tied to his affection, not to the fleeting judgment of a dozen nightly customers. It would be a temporary reprieve from the cruel marketplace of youth. But it would also be a gamble. If he cast you aside in 5 years, you would be older, with no skills, no savings, and no place in the world. You would be even less equipped to survive than you are now. The tiny line by your eye becomes an obsession. You see it every time you look in the polished bronze. It is a memento mori, a tiny reminder of your own professional mortality. It represents the ticking clock that governs your life. Every day, every week, every month that you stay in this house, you are spending your only true capital, your youth. The choice is no longer just between the brothel and the gilded cage. It is a race against time. Do you stay in the relative, known chaos of Igma's house, saving what little you can and hoping for a miracle? Or do you take the rich man's gamble, hoping to secure a few years of comfort before the looking glass tells a story that no one wants to buy anymore? The reflection in the mirror is distorted and dim, but the truth it tells is terrifyingly clear. Your anxiety about the future, sparked by that first tiny wrinkle, finds a human face a few weeks later. It arrives in the form of a woman named Matilda, who appears at the back door of the house one evening, begging for a bit of bread. You don't recognize her at first. She is stooped and thin, her face a web of deep-set wrinkles. She wears shapeless, dirty rags, and her hair is a shock of grey, matted and wild. She has the haunted, hollowed-out look of the chronically destitute. It's Eleanor who recognizes her. Matilda. Eleanor whispers, her voice filled with a strange mix of pity and horror. It turns out Matilda worked in this very house, long before your time. She was, according to Eleanor, the reigning beauty of her day, the woman every client asked for, the one who earned the most, the one who wore the finest dresses Agnes would provide. She was the Marie, the Isabel, the you of her generation. Now she is this, a ghost at the back door, begging for scraps. Agnes comes to see what the commotion is about. She looks at Matilda with cold, undisguised contempt. There's nothing for you here, Agnes says, her voice like ice. Please, Agnes, Matilda croaks, her voice a dry rasp. Just a little something. For old time's sake. Old times don't pay the bills, Agnes snaps, and she slams the door in Matilda's face. The finality of the sound echoes in the sudden silence of the kitchen. You are frozen, a piece of bread halfway to your mouth. You have just seen your own potential future. This is what happens when you grow too old for the trade, when your looks fade and the clients stop asking for you. This is the end of the road. The informal retirement plan for a medieval prostitute was grummaned, for most, non-existent. A tiny fume like Agnes might be sharp enough and ruthless enough to save or scheme their way into becoming a madam themselves. An even tinier few might successfully transition to a less demanding role, becoming a cook or laundress within the house, though this was rare. A handful might attract a patron who, out of genuine affection or pity, would provide for them in their old age. The path was brutally simple when you could no longer earn your work asked out. You became Matilda. You are left to fend for yourself on the streets, often with a body broken by years of abuse, disease, and the toxic remedies you used to survive. You might become a beggar, a petty thief, or a bawd, a freelance procureuress who lures young, desperate girls into the life, perpetuating the cycle. Your life expectancy, already short, plummets. A strange and sad historical footnote is the leper's squint or hagioscope. These were small, angled openings in the walls of some medieval churches, allowing people who were deemed unclean, like lepers, the excommunicated, and sometimes unrepentant prostitutes, to view the service without contaminating the main congregation. It's a physical manifestation of their social status, able to see salvation, but never allowed to enter the room where it happens. Destitute Matilda peering through such a slit in the wall is a powerful symbol of her final place in the world. Later that night, the house is quiet. You, Isabel, and Eleanor are sitting together, the spectre of Matilda hanging between you. She had a patron once, Eleanor says softly, staring into the fire. A war merchant. He kept her for 2 years. She thought she was set for life. Then he married a girl with a big dowry, and he dropped Matilda without a penny. Isabel shivers, pulling her shawl tighter. She was never the same after that. She started drinking heavily. Agnes kept her on for a while out of, well, not pity. Habit, I suppose. But her looks went, and the clients didn't want her. Eventually, Agnes told her she was turning her key. The story chills you to the bone. Matilda had a patron. She took the gilded cage option, the very one Sir Robert is offering you. And it still lead her to this end. The shield he offered was temporary, his affection as fleeting as a season. You now understand the full, terrifying trajectory of this life. You start as the desperate new girl. If you survive, you become the sought-after prize. You learn the tricks, the remedies, the psychological games. You might even get a patron, a brief taste of luxury. But time is always working against you. The clock is ticking, and eventually, your time runs out. You become the crone, the ghost at the back door, a cautionary tale for the next generation. The debate among historians about the ultimate fate of these women is oft unlimited by the lack of records. They simply disappear from the official narrative. Their deaths are unrecorded, their graves unmarked. They become part of the anonymous, silent majority of the medieval poor. You look at your own hands. They are still young. You think of Sir Robert's offer no longer as a rescue, but as a different kind of gamble on the same rig table. You think of Agnes, a rare survivor who won the game by becoming the house, and you think of Matilda, who lost everything. The path forward has never seemed so unclear, and the potential endings have never been so starkly, terrifyingly visible. The encounter with Matilda changes something profound within you. The daily struggles for survival, the clients, the debts, the fear of pregnancy, suddenly seem small in comparison to the vast, terrifying question of your own legacy. Or, more accurately, the complete lack of one. You start to think about the stories that will be told about your time. The official chroniclers, the monks diligently writing their histories in faraway monasteries, are recording the lives of kings, the dates of battles, the succession of popes. The great men of your age will be remembered. Their names will be carved in stone on their tombs. Their deeds will be woven into tapestries. What will be left of you, of Isabel, Eleanor, Marie, Matilda? Nothing. You are living a life that is designed to be forgotten. Your profession thrives on discretion and secrecy. The men who use your services do so with the implicit understanding that the encounter will be erased from their own life stories. You are a footnote they pay to have deleted. Your entire existence is a secret that everyone has agreed to keep. You watch as a client, a respectable stonemason, leaves the house. He adjusts his cloak, squares his shoulders, and nods back into the city, back to his life, his family, his place in the world. He will go on to build a cathedral, perhaps, or a fine stone house for a merchant. His work will stand for centuries. His name might even be recorded in the guild records. Your shared hour with him, however, will vanish as if it never happened. This error is not just passive, it is an active, structural part of your world. The church condemns you, but refuses to record your name in the parish register of respectable folk. The law prosecutes you for public nuisance, but the court records your crime, not your story. You exist only as a negative, a problem to be managed, a sin to be condemned. This is a frustration shared by modern historians who try to study your life. The sources are almost always hostile, written by the very men who created and upheld the system that trapped you. They are court records, theological tracts, satirical poems, and moralizing tales. In these documents, you are never the protagonist of your own story. You are a stock character, the wicked temptress, the pitiful victim, the comic bod. The actual, complex, human woman is almost impossible to find. Trying to reconstruct your inner life from these sources is like trying to understand a forest by looking only at the axes used to chop it down. One afternoon, you find Isabel doing something you've never seen before. She has a small, charred stick and a scrap of discarded parchment, and she is painstakingly trying to form letters. She is trying to write her own name. Isabel. The letters are clumsy, childish, but they are there. My father was a clerk, she says, her voice soft with the memory of a different life. He taught me my letters before he died. I try to practice sometimes, so I don't forget. It's a small, profound act of defiance. In a world that is trying to erase her, she is insisting on her own existence, her own identity. She is writing her name, a quiet declaration that I am here. You think about the oral culture of the house, the whispered warnings, the shared stories, the knowledge of herbs and remedies passed from one woman to the next. This is your history. It's a history that is never written down, a fragile thing that exists only in the memories of those who live it. When you are all gone, it will vanish like smoke. The question of whether any of these women kept secret diaries or records is a tantalizing one for historians. It is almost certainly a fantasy. Parchment was expensive, literacy was rare, and the risk of such a document being discovered was immense. Your history was an oral one, ephemeral and easily lost. You start to feel a desperate, aching need to leave a mark, any mark, however small. One day, when you are alone in the small room at the back of the house, you find a loose floorboard. You pry it up. Underneath is just dirt and dust. Using a small sharp stone, you scratch a single, crude letter into the underside of the board. The first letter of your name. It's a pathetic, secret gesture. No one will ever see it. In a few years, it will likely be worn away by damp and time. But for you in this moment, it is everything. It is a rebellion against your own annihilation. You are pushing back against the immense, crushing weight of historical oblivion. You put the floorboard back in place. Your heart is pounding. You have committed an act of remembrance. You have tried to write yourself into the story, even if it's on the bottom of a floorboard in a room no one will ever care about. You have made your mark. A single, defiant scratch in the dark. The decision about Sir Robert's offer still hangs over you, a constant, low-level hum of anxiety. The more you think about Matilda at the back door and the single letter you carved under the floorboard, the less appealing the gilded cage becomes. The thought of being isolated, of being entirely dependent on one man's whim, feels more like a trap than ever. One night you can't sleep. The house is quiet, the snores of the other women are soft, rhythmic chorus in the darkness. Your mind is racing, replaying every choice, every fear, every small victory of the past few months. You slip out of your bed and creep through the sleeping house, up a narrow ladder that leads to a small space used for storage. There is a single, small window in the attic, little more than a slit in the thatch, and through it you can see a sliver of the night sky. The moon is a perfect, silver disk, and the stars are scattered like spilled salt across black velvet. The air is cold and clean up here, away from the stale smells of the house below. You sit by the window, pulling your thin wool cloak around you, and you let yourself dream. You don't dream of being a queen or a noble lady. Those fantasies are too far away, too absurd. Your dreams are smaller, more tangible, and all the more painful for it. You dream of a life you might have had, an ordinary life. You imagine waking up not to the cold dread of a client's arrival, but to the sun slanting through the window of a small cottage. You imagine the smell of baking bread, not the cloying scent of lead paint. You see yourself with a husband, not a prince, not a knight, just a man. A baker, perhaps his hands always dusted with flour, or a farmer, his face weathered by the sun, his smile gentle and real. In this dream, your body is your own. It is not a commodity to be sold, a vessel to be painfully cleansed, a battlefield against pregnancy. It is just a body, one that gets tired after a day of work, one that feels the warmth of the sun, one that might, if you were lucky, carry a child you actually wanted, a child who would be a blessing, not a curse. You imagine the simple, profound pleasures of that life, the satisfaction of pulling weeds from a small garden, the gossip shared with other women over a well, the weight of a sleeping child in your arms, the comfort of growing old with someone, your hands wrinkled together, your shared history a warm blanket against the cold. These are the things the respectable world takes for granted. For you, they are an impossible, heartbreaking fantasy. The historical reality is that for most women in your position, this dream was just that, a dream. The social stigma was too great. A reformed prostitute was rarely, if ever, considered a suitable candidate for marriage. She was seen as permanently damaged goods, untrustworthy and impure. While there are a few recorded instances of former prostitutes marrying, they are the exceptions that prove the rule. Most men, even those who are regular clients, would never consider marrying a woman from a brothel. It would mean social and professional ruin. There's a concept that historians of emotion discuss the idea of what was dreamable in a particular era. For a peasant, dreaming of becoming a king was a fairy tale. For a woman like you, dreaming of a simple, respectable life was just as fantastical. Your social mobility was almost exclusively downward. You lean your head against the rough wooden frame of the window. A single hot tear escapes and traces a cold path down your cheek. The grief you feel is not for the life you have, but for the one you have lost. The life that was stolen from you by poverty, by misfortune, by a world that had no place for a girl with no dowry and no family. You think of the first letter of your name scratched under the floorboard, a mark of your current existence. You think of Isabel practicing her letters, holding on to a piece of a past life. You think of Eleanor swallowing poison to try and control her future. Each of you is dreaming in your own way of the past, the future, that might have been. The moon begins its slow descent, the sky in the east just beginning to soften to a pale, bruised purple. The city below is still asleep. Soon the bells will ring for matins. The bakers will light their ovens. The world of ordinary life will begin its day. You must go back down. Back to the house, to your narrow bed, to the life that is real. You have a decision to make. Not in the world of dreams, but in the cold, hard reality of the life you have. And you know, with a sudden, quiet certainty, what your answer to Sir Robert will be. The next time Sir Robert comes to the house, you are ready. He arrives with the same air of confident ownership, bringing a small velvet trap box. Inside is a silver pin, delicate and lovely. It's the final law, the closing gift in his negotiation. He asks if you have considered his generous offer. You look him in the eye, your heart a steady, slow drum against your ribs. You are not the frightened girl he met weeks ago. You are a graduate of Ignis Brutal Academy. You have survived sickness, violence, and the ghosts of your own future. You have learned the hidden sciences of herbs and the grim calculus of survival. You are no longer just a victim of your circumstances. You are an agent within them. You are very kind, my lord, you say, your voice even and calm, but I must decline. The surprise on his face is immediate and deeply satisfying. It quickly curdles into disbelief, then anger. His ego, the most fragile thing about him, has been wounded. Decline, he sputters. Do you have any idea what you are turning down? A life of comfort, of security. For this, he gestures dismissively at the room, at the life he assumed you must despise. I have a place here, you say simply. It's not a lie. It is a strange, complicated, and often terrible place, but it is yours. You have a community here, a sisterhood of shared survival. You have the knowledge you need to navigate this world. In his gilded cage, you would be utterly alone, armed with nothing but his fleeting affection. He scoffs, his pride stung. You'll regret this, he says, his voice cold. When you are old and haggard like the rest of them, you will remember this day and curse your own foolishness. Perhaps you reply, meeting his gaze without flinching. He leaves, slamming the door behind him. The silver pin sits on the table, a beautiful, useless thing. Agnes, who overheard the exchange, is furious with you for turning down such a lucrative arrangement. She berates you for an hour, her voice a shrill torrent of insults. You stand and take it, your silence a shield. You have made your choice. You have chosen the devil you know. You have chosen your flawed sisterhood over a wealthy patron. You have chosen the known risks of this life over the unknown risks of another. Your story does not have a dramatic climax. There is no great escape, no fairy tale rescue. History is not usually like that. For most people, and especially for women like you, life was not a series of grand events, but a long, quiet exercise in endurance. Your story ends as it began with the dawn. You wake up in your narrow bed. The house is quiet. You get up, you wash your face, you prepare for the day. You are still in debt to Agnes. The fear of pregnancy and disease is still your constant companion. The future is still a vast, terrifying unknown. Nothing has changed, and yet everything has. You have found a strange kind of power in a powerless position. It is the power of knowledge, of community, of choice. You chose to say no. You chose your flawed sisterhood over a wealthy patron. You chose the known risks of this life over the unknown risks of another. This is the reality for so many whose lives are lived in the margins of history. Their victories are not grand battles, but small, internal acts of will. Their legacies are not carved in stone, but whispered in the oral histories of their communities. The question that historians can never fully answer is about this inner life. How did these women see themselves? Did they feel a sense of agency, or were they crushed by the weight of their circumstances? The answer is likely as complex and varied as the women themselves. You go downstairs. Isabel is by the fire, humming a quiet tune. Eleanor gives you a small, knowing nod. They both heard what happened. They understand your choice in a way Sir Robert or Agnes never could. You are a survivor. That is your story. It doesn't have a happy ending because it doesn't have an ending at all. It just continues. Another night, another dawn. You will continue to navigate this treacherous world armed with your wits, your dangerous knowledge, and the quiet, resilient strength of the women around you. You will live, you will endure, and you will endure, and you will remain a stubborn, unwritten footnote in a history that tried its best to forget you. And so the house grows quiet once more. The sounds of the city outside begin to fade into a low, distant hum. Like the memory of a half-forgotten song, you can feel yourself drifting now, flirt space between the story and the dream. The edges of the world are growing soft, the sharp lines blurring into gentle shadows. There is nothing left to hold on to, nothing left to do but float. Imagine the room around you, the one you're in right now, becoming a safe and peaceful harbor. The blankets are like the calm, warm waters of a hidden cove, rising and falling with the gentle rhythm of your own breathing. Each breath in is a soft, silent wave, bringing with it a sense of deep, deep calm. And each breath out is a release, letting go of the story, letting go of the day, letting go of the day, letting go of the quiet, and the dark, and the feeling of being held securely. You might feel a sense of heaviness in your limbs, a pleasant, sinking feeling, as if you are slowly, gently settling into the softest, and at the bottom worries of the day can drift away now, like tiny silver fish swimming off into the deep, dark water, leaving your mind clear, and still, and quiet. There is only rest here, a profound and deserved rest. The story is over, its purpose fulfilled. It was just a small boat to carry you to this shore of slumber, and you have arrived. The final word has been whispered. If your mind is still gently stirring, you're welcome to drift into another of my stories. If not, I wish you a deep and peaceful slumber. Good night.